last week in Bedlam. It was the battle of the two high-powered offenses, and you can say it's almost, to a certain extent, two high-powered offenses matching up when TCU takes on Oklahoma.
Yeah, the only difference is TCU also happens to have a top defense in the country this year, which isn't something Big 12 teams have really been accustomed to either playing against or being able to say that they have.
And this is going to decide the Big 12 title game.
Oh, 100%. I also think that this is a complete elimination game for the college football playoff. Whoever wins this game, their chances just went up tenfold, and whoever loses is completely out of the picture for the rest of the season. TCU is definitely hoping to build on this recent success they've had. They are the best by a long shot as far as defense goes in the Big 12. A lot of these offenses have left other defenses in the Big 12 just in complete shambles with absolutely no idea what's going on. TCU has been the lone exception. They've been holding opponents to under 70 yards rushing a game, which is top in the entire nation. They're only allowing 14 points, and they've had 2 complete shutouts, something Oklahoma hasn't done at all this year. And they pressure the quarterback a lot. Opposing quarterbacks only throw 49% against TCU, which is 3rd in the country, and they also get after the quarterback, sacking the quarterback almost 8% of all dropbacks. Their offense has also been pretty good this year. They've not only had that amazing defense, but their offense has been able to follow suit. They're averaging 435 yards on offense, and they've really limited their overall turnovers to just 11 on the year, which is pretty good for a team that really throws the ball and takes a lot of big downfield risks. If you take away that Iowa State game, TCU's averaging almost 40 points a game and 450 yards of offense. That Iowa State game was just a huge hit to every single one of their statistical categories and to their season as a whole. That one loss is looking a little better now when you take into account that Iowa State's finally in the top 25.
One thing Oklahoma has for sure is this high-powered offense. Yeah, TCU's been doing great this year, but Oklahoma under Baker Mayfield had an intense shootout last week in the Bedlam rivalry, but Baker Mayfield came out on top. He gathered 598 passing yards for his second career game with over 500 passing yards, and they had almost 800 total yards on offense, which is just insane. But what do you expect when both teams lack a stout defense? But you have to give some credit to the wide receiver core, because with a passing offense, you have to have people who can catch the ball, wide receivers that are reliable, and they have just that. 3 of their wide receivers have almost over 600 yards apiece.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think any other team, maybe West Virginia, can say this year, but that's really it. But Oklahoma's defense has sucked. Let's just be real. You can't consistently give up 400 yards against other elite opponents if you expect to win, maybe against other teams that also don't have a defense. In a game where defense is optional, sure, that's fine. But against a team that is going to play good defense against you, that's not okay. You have to help. Your defense has to help you out at some point, create a turnover or something. And that style of play is great for fans. You get a lot of hype, you get a lot of headlines, but you're not going to win championships. Just ask Oregon. And they're playing at home, which also doesn't, that sounds like a good thing, but in this rivalry, they've won just as many as they've lost at home. They have 4 wins and 4 losses at home, and they've really dominated the rivalry overall. So it's a little odd that TCU has the success that they do in Norman and self-inflicted wounds. They have a ton of penalties on the year. They rank 97th in penalty yards per game, and they're also 50th in turnovers. They've given the ball up 12 times this year. That's something that TCU is going to take advantage of, and they're going to really exemplify those overall turnovers. TCU's forced 14 turnovers on the year. It's something Oklahoma's going to have to be really wary of. TCU trying to strip the ball. It's going to be really tough for those Oklahoma running backs and receivers to not get stripped, and for Baker Mayfield to play it safe. He's had some really weak secondaries that he's gone up against in recent history, but against a stronger secondary, he can't make some of those risks that he's been making in weeks past.
Oklahoma might just be the exception to winning a championship without a great defense. The TCU offense enters this game at a severe disadvantage. If it comes down to a shootout, TCU is not going to have the endurance to win. So it's critical that they secure some early touchdowns to give them a nice lead. But this game is going to come down to defense. TCU does have that stronger defense, but here's where they struggle on defense is the passing. Oklahoma might just be the exception to not having a stellar defense and possibly winning a championship, at least the Big 12 this year.
And something TCU does that no other major program does is they run a 4-2-5 defense, which really gives them those extra DBs in the backfield, which helps quite a bit, especially on longer passes. They keep everything in front of them. They don't allow very many big plays. And defensively, they're really interesting to watch. The way they line up pre-snap is different, a little different every time. Like you said, it's something that they're going to need to play around with. For TCU, it has a lot to do with their offense. In this game against Oklahoma, you're not going to completely shut them out as much as TCU's defense would like to think that. It's just not realistic. So for me, Cavante Turpin, he's 5'9", 150 pounds of pure speed. Supposedly in the offseason, he ran a 4.2 340. He's been used basically everywhere for TCU. He has a touchdown. He's scored touchdowns in 5 different ways. He's passed, received, had a punt return, kickoff return, and rushed for a touchdown on the year. They use him everywhere. His numbers might not look amazing in one category, but when you combine every single category that he has on the season, he's been a pretty spectacular player, and you never know where he's going to line up.
The standout player last week against Oklahoma State for Oklahoma was Marquise Brown, and he's going to continue to be that top target for Baker Mayfield. He's been a huge playmaker for Oklahoma this year, surpassing 100 reception yards during 3 separate occasions. He does a great job getting open, getting behind that defense, but is he going to continue to do this against one of the better defenses the Sooners are going to face this year?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a key matchup this week, and I think TCU is going to come into Norman and pull off the upset. They've done it before. I think they can do it again this year. This is most likely the best defense, arguably the best defense, maybe Ohio State, that Oklahoma's played all season and probably will play until they get to whether it be a college football playoff or whatever bowl game they go into. I think TCU has a high-powered offense. That defensive line creates a lot of sacks, and Oklahoma gives up a lot of sacks. Baker Mayfield puts the ball in precarious areas all the time and just expects his receivers to make a play against pretty weak secondaries, against a stronger secondary in TCU. That's not something you can do. You have to play smarter, otherwise you're just going to throw interception after interception. And I think because of that, TCU is going to force quite a few turnovers, maybe 3 turnovers in this game. And I think they're going to come out with the win. I think it's going to be close and a little higher scoring than most people would expect for a TCU game.
If we compare the schedules, they both played Oklahoma State, both have beat Oklahoma State. TCU had a bigger lead and kind of maintained a bigger lead throughout the game. So it does show that defense does come in handy, but last week, Oklahoma State had the better defense, and they failed. They hung with them, but they failed in the last couple minutes, and it became what was a 3-point game became a 10-point game. So defense does matter. I'm big on whoever has a stronger defense wins. After last week, though, I'm just really still impressed with Baker Mayfield and the offense he's been able to run despite the lack of defense. These next few weeks, as we near the college football playoffs, are just going to keep getting interesting as they have starting 2 weeks ago. You have teams and crazy matchups that are just going to produce upsets, various results people don't see coming. And you also have teams that are top programs but have been struggling this year, Florida, Florida State, who are fighting for a chance to even get a bid to a bowl game.
Yeah, and you're going to see those teams like Iowa who really have nothing to lose come out and play their hearts out, and that causes a lot more upsets later in the season.
But if you like this week's episode, feel free to check out some of our others. We'll join you next week. I'm Janae Muchmore.
And I'm Griffin Parkrose.
Thanks for watching RedZone to EndZone.